Okay, this week's Parsha is Parshas Beha'aloscha. Towards the end of the Parsha, there's the whole Maisa of the Slav after the Messianim. You shouldn't mix up the two. There's the Messianim, and then there's the Asafsuf that ask for the Slav. So, Pashup Shad, in learning the Parsha, I have 5 kashas, I think. I don't remember. It could be I have more, but this is what's coming to mind right now. So first of all, we know that Klal Yisrael already kvetched for the Slav in all the way back in Parshas Beshalach. So what is this second kvetching of for Slav? What's going on here? I know a lot of these kashas are Rishayim ask, and we'll get to it. Another kasha is that what's up is now the Klal Yisrael or the Erev Rav with Klal Yisrael are kvetching for Slav. How does it come in right now? Why after what happened previously? It sounds like it's specifically now that they're kvetching. Nacha kasha is that Teich the kvetching about the Slav, Klal Yisrael, it also says that Moshe Rabbeinu found them, Vayishma Moshe Sa'am Beichel Mishpachaisav. That Moshe Rabbeinu found Klal Yisrael crying Lemishpachas. So Rashi brings the Yedua Dika Chazal that Al Iske Mishpachas, that they were kvetching about the Asik of Mishpachas. What is that? Al Arayas Hanasaris Lahem, and the Arayas that became Asa to them. So the Shaila is, which I asked, which is the Pashta Kasha, jumps out. Why over here mixed up into Klal Yisrael saying they want basa, they want meat? All of a sudden they're kvetching about the Arayas also. The Arayas were ushered to them a whole year earlier by Matan Torah. So what's up is now Klal Yisrael is kvetching about it. I found the Kli Yakar asks the Kasha, and the Kli Yakar goes with the whole mahalach that really this whole parsha is a parsha of Arayas, has nothing to do with already the Tanaim were miramis this, that it could be the ganze parsha is a kvetch about Arayas and it has nothing to do with really basar, but that's not the pashtus in the psukim. So vi kumt das rein over here beichel mishbechaisav in the midst of kvetching about the basar. Number 4 was bothering me that Klal Yisrael asked for basar. Klal Yisrael said they want meat. So the pasuk says, "Mi yachilenu basar." Who's going to feed us meat? So why does the Eibishter then give them slav, give them birds? Why didn't the Eibishter give them animals, give them cows, give them tzainu bakar? How is this an answer to what Klal Yisrael asked for? Even if it's a punishment, but punish them with what they asked for. And one more kasha is that the Gemara in Chulin Yedzayin, which we learned in Daf Yomi recently, the Gemara says that there's a sheet of Rabbi Shmuel that Klal Yisrael was aser to eat any basar unless they brought it as a korban. So the question right away is, yes, there's some pashta terutzim, but we'll get to them. But the question right away is that how are they allowed to eat the slav? The slav is basar. Basar taiva is asa to them. So how was Klal Yisrael allowed to eat the slav? So those are 5 kashas that you can ask on the parsha, which are asked, a lot of them by Rishayim. So there's a fascinating Rabbeinu Bachir that I never saw before, that he says a Mayadik Mahalach in the Psukim. The Rishayim already the Tanaim, Machlekes Gamliel, and the Machlekes Gamliel, the Machlekes Reb Akiva and Reb Shimon. And also there's another mahalach from Rebbe of how to learn what was the shakla v'taya between Moshe Rabbeinu and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That Moshe says, how's the Eibishter, how are you going to do it? Hatzainu baka yishachid lahem. What's going to be? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu answers, Hayad Hashem tiksar, at asira, you'll see now, hayikircha devari imloi. So there's already a shmuz in the Tanaim. The Rishayim also say a mahalach. They're basically going in the mahalach of Rebbe Kiva. Zok the Rabbeinu Bachya. Ve'chacham Reb David HaKimchi Pirsh b'shem Aviv Zal. Hatzainu Bakar Yishachit Lahem. What does this mean? Because even though they had a lot of Tzainu Bakar, but we're going like Rabbi Yishmael and Chulin Daf Yud Zayin, that the only way they were allowed to eat this Tzainu Bakar was if they would bring it as a korban. That's the only way they were allowed to bring it. And Zakt Rabbeinu Bachya that if their whole house wasn't tahar, they couldn't bring a korban. So yeah, you're right. They had a lot of tzayin and bakar, but they had to bring them as korbanos. So that's what Moshe was saying. That if you let hatzaynu bakar yishachet lahem, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if you let them shech their animals wherever they want, so then they'll be happy. That they'll be good. That's what he says. Sheyuchlu lishchet b'chol makom. But if you're not going to let them shecht everywhere, they only could bring shlamim. So then they're not going to have enough meat. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu answered, Hayad Hashem tiksar. I'll give them basar that they won't have to use the tzayin and bakar. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu answered. So Rabbeinu Bachya doesn't really explain what HaKadosh Baruch Hu's answer was. And then Rabbeinu Bachya ends off that the lashon of kol digei hayam einay misyashev ala lashon. What does it have to do with fish? Well, how does that come in? So the Das Keinim says the Mahalach, the same Mahalach, and he says a little more. He says that the reason why Klal Yisrael were kvetching was because there were only 3 Kohanim here that could take care of their karbanos. That's not enough for if all Klal Yisrael wants to 600,000 men and forget the women and kids, just the men. That's not enough for the Kohanim to take care of it, and then there were going to be problems with nicer. So that's what Klal Yisrael was kvetching. So Zakta Das Kenim Imes Kol Digei Ayam Ye Asif Lahem Umatzah Lahem. That's Benichusa. What Moshe Rabbeinu was saying, he wasn't asking a kasha. He's saying if they would just be asking for fish, so then that's fine because there's no korban. But basar, that they have to make a korban out of it. So Das Kenim is going on this mahalach, and he explains what Moshe Rabbeinu meant to say with the fish, and then he ends off that what HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Hayad Hashem tiksar ad asira she'etin lahem basar v'lo yitztarchu lekarban. Why wouldn't they need a korban? V'zeu haslav she'ein mevi'in mimenu korban. Because this is a type of bird that you don't have to bring a korban from it. And the Gemara in Chulin, Daf Yud Zayin says, beferish, that even according to Rabbi Yishmael, that any meat was asur to Klal Yisrael throughout the years in the Midbar, unless they brought it as a korban. That was only something that was right to bring as a korban. But Slav, which is not an animal, which is a bird that's not brought as a korban, that avada you could eat. So I think with this Rabbeinu Bachya and Das Keinim, we can answer all of our kashas kemat. Why were they complaining about Slav again? And why were they? And why now? The answer is because the first Slav, they were able to just eat their regular tzayin bakar. Only once the Mishkan was built, and then it became asur for them to eat basar. The only way they were allowed to eat meat was to bring a korban. That whole isser only happened once the Mishkan was built. So now the Mishkan is built. Now they can't have their tzayin bakar. So now the slav that they had is not enough. That's what changed. That's why they're kvetching again. I think that's. I mean, I'm just using the Das Keinim and Rabbeinu Bachya that are saying this mahalach. They didn't say that's why Klal Yisrael are kvetching, but they're coming to explain the Shaklav Taya with HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Moshe. But I think it's Pashut Zustel. That's why they're kvetching now. The first love was good. It was a supplement to the tzayin bakar that they had. But now that tzayin bakar they can't bring anymore. They have to bring a korban. Now they need more meat. Azay, that would answer the first two kashas. And I was thinking maybe a shtickle knetch is that to answer the kasha of how does Arias come in, why are they kvetching about Arias? Because once they started kvetching about the Isurim that are new to them, so they just brought up another Isur that is bothering them. It's like a Gilgal Shvua Kamat. It's not a whole random kvetch. They were kvetching about Isurim that the Eibishter gave them. They were kvetching, now that the Mishkan's built, we have to bring karbanos. And it's also to bring anything else. Once we have this taina, there's also the other taina. I think now that, because Pashup Shad in the Psukim, it's just one is a kvetch about basar meat, and one is a kvetch about a rai. It's nothing to do with Isurim, the first kvetch about basar. But now that you have this Rabbeinu Bach and Das Kenim, that even the first kvetch is a kvetch about an issa that the Eibishter caused. So you could say that once they're kvetching about one issa, they're kvetching about another. After Laimar. And now it makes sense. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu give them slav and not meat? Because their whole kvetch was that they need to bring a carbon from the animal. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to give them something which you don't need to bring a carbon from. That's why, even though they asked for basar, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave them something else. And we asked that l'chayra all basar taiva was aser. How are they allowed to eat slav? The teretz is because, like the Gemara fears ice, that something which is not right for a carbon, that you don't have, that they were allowed to eat even without bringing a carbon. So that's geschmack. So this mahalach of the Rishonim would l'chayra answer all 5 kashas. But there's one small issue. The Gemara in Chulin Daf Yud Zayin, when it asks a kasha on Rabbi Yishmael, who holds that all basar is aser to all basar was aser to Klal Yisrael in the Midbar, the Gemara brings the pasuk. One of the kashas is a pasuk, Ach kasha yoichal es hatzvi v'esa'ayil kein teichlenu. So it's talking about a tzvi and an ayil, a deer and a ram. So the Gemara says, L'Rabbi Yishmael, tzvi v'ayil gufei mi avashari, was tzvi and ayil aser? Tzvi and ayil mutter? Tzvi and ayil wasn't even mutter. So how's the Torah talking to Klal Yisrael about eating a tzvi and an ayil if they weren't allowed to eat it? So that's where the Gemara is mechadish. Ki asar achmana behema dechazila akrava. The Torah only asked a behema that's right for a carbon. Aval chaya, but a chaya, the loy chazila akrava loy asar achmana. But a chaya which you can't bring as a carbon, you can't bring a deer as a carbon. So that the Torah didn't ask. So frekter be summer garbas, a bambakasha. He says in the Gemara in the Havamina that the Gemara thought that everything was aser. The Gemara, what did the Gemara do with slav? How were Klal Yisrael able to eat slav? If everything was aser, so how was Klal Yisrael able to eat slav? And really, you can ask the kasha maybe a little better. Why didn't the Gemara just ask straight up, according to Rabbi Yishmael, how did they eat slav? The Gemara didn't need to go to a pasuk of tzvi and ayil. The Gemara should have just asked, slav, if all basar is aser, how did Klal Yisrael eat slav? So this is just a shtickle problem. So I want to say a shtickle mahalach that it's Yedua Reb Chaim by Chanukah. Reb Chaim asks a kasha on the Beis Yosef. I don't remember which teretz he's asking on, but he asks that how were they allowed to use the oil that was a nace? L'chayra, Reb Chaim says that it was shemen nace. It wasn't shemen zayizach. It was oil of nace. Azay is Yedua from Reb Chaim. It's brought in. It's a Alter Sefer Kuntres Hamayad Mitayas Brisk. And it's a shayla if Reb Chaim even asked this. Yeshaimim, I think Briskerov said that Reb Chaim never asked this kasha. But Azay is gebracht from Reb Chaim. So I want to stel zu this yisoid, and there's a few rayas that I want to stel zu. There's a Gemara in Sanhedrin Samachem Beis. The famous Gemara, the Gemara says, Reb Chanina v'Reb Oishia have a yasvi kol maili shabsi every Erev Shabbos, va'aski b'sefer Yetzirah, and they would be Isaac in the Sefer Yetzirah, umivri luhu iglo tilsa, and they would create, they would be mechadish and cow va'achlile, and they would eat it. So I was bothered by a cute kasha when I learned this Gemara, that why only Erev Shabbos? Why not Erev Yontif? The Gemara says, Kol Maili Shabbos, every Erev Shabbos. Why did the Gemara say, Kol Maili Shabbos of Yontif? What's up is on Yontif they didn't do this. So what I was thinking then was that the chiyuv to eat basar on Shabbos and Yontif is different. On Shabbos, I don't know if this is a klor zach, but I'm pretty sure that on Shabbos is a din einig Shabbos. It's just a din that you're supposed to be misanig. You're supposed to have the einig for Shabbos. On Yom Tov, it's a din basar yayin. You have to have basar and yayin. So oibazei is ken zayin that this igla tilsa that was created by the Sefer Yetzirah. So yeah, it could give einig Shabbos. But to have a din basar, it's not. It's basar nes. It's not real basar. So that's why the Gemara said that they only created Erev Shabbos and not Erev Yom Tov, because Erev Yom Tov it has to be basar, and a cow that's created from a Sefer Yetzirah is not basar. For Shabbos it could be Mekayim Einik Shabbos, but for Yom Tov it's not basar. That's one raya that is l'chayra, that you see that basar that was created b'derech nes, even with the Sefer Yetzirah, is not basar. Another raya, which is pretty mefurish, is the Gemara in Nintesam Beis in Sanhedrin says that Adam Arishan was not mutter to eat basar for achila. He was only allowed to eat the grass. Now, there's a famous machlekes Rishonim. Tosfos on Nunvav Amud Beis says that what was Adam Rishon not allowed to do? He wasn't allowed to kill an animal and eat it. But avada, he could eat meat if it dies by itself. And that's how Tosfos gets out of Ever Min HaChai. But other Rishonim seem to learn pretty mefurish that it was asur for Adam Rishon to eat any meat. So the Gemara asks, Meisvei hayu Reb Yehuda ben Tema Aimer. Reb Yehuda ben Tema would say, Adam Rishon meisav began Eden haya v'hayu malachei hasharis tzoylin loy basar u'misanin loy hayayin. The malachei hasharis were sitting there and they were roasting meat for him and getting wine ready for him. So grada, this kasha chab getracht that it's l'chayra mevur, not. You have to know how Tosfos learns this Gemara, because if Adam Arishan was just not able to kill an animal and eat it, but Avadi was able to eat meat, so what's the problem with this Gemara? What's the problem with Adam Arishan eating meat? This kasha heipsach nishtan, it shouldn't start. So granted, this was bothering me. How would Tosfos learn this Gemara? L'chayr is very shver. But according to the other Rishonim, this kasha is very geshmak. He wasn't allowed to eat any meat. And here we see that the Malachei Ashar is Tzoylin loy basar. So the Gemara answers, Hasam bebasar hayayin min hashamayim. The Gemara answers, this is basar that was coming down from Shamayim. And the Gemara says, Mi kabasar hayayin min hashamayim. Is there such a thing? And the Gemara brings the Maisa with the Shimon ben Chalafta that the Eibishter gave him 2 pieces of meat to fend off a lion, so the lion shouldn't kill him. So you see that there's basar yared min hashamayim. But l'maisa, what does the Gemara answer? The Gemara is saying Adam Arishan is not allowed to eat meat, but he's allowed to eat basar yared min hashamayim. Sounds like klor that basar hayared min hashamayim is not basar. It wouldn't be nichlal in the issa to eat meat. That's noch a raya. And then I have one more raya. Gemara and Yuma in Hema Beis. The Gemara in Yuma brings a machlokes by lechem abirim. What does lechem abirim mean about the mun? So Rabbi Kiva says that it's lechem shemalchei asharis oichlin oisei. Lechem that the malchei asharis eat it. Divrei Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yishmael said, malchei asharis don't eat lechem. They don't need it. So what does it mean? Lechem shenivla b'masayim v'arbaim u'shmoinei varim. That it's a lechem that gets fully swallowed into the 248 avarim. So elamani mekayim v'yosei tia lechal ala zeinecha. So Ibazei, Rabbi Yishmael asked, so why did Klal Yisrael ever need the parsha of how they should be clean about going to the bathroom? So Zakt Rabbi Yishmael, because it's for dvarim shetagare umay sa'olam meichin aisan lahem. It's for things that the merchants of the other countries, of the other people, would come and sell to Klal Yisrael. So Frek the Yavitz, Frek the Yaakov Emden in the back, I'll read you his Lashon. Tema, haloi gam tzaynu bakar mikner avit si umi mitzrayim, milvad Slav. Right. Well, what was the whole kasha of Rabbi Yishmael? What was the kasha of Rabbi Yishmael? Rabbi Yishmael's kasha, what do they need? What does Klal Yisrael need to go to the bathroom for? I'll tell you why. Because they had their own meat, and they also had the Slav. So imkein ma tzarich l'tchuke. Why do you have to come up with a nayazach dvarim shetagari umezaylam meichun ayzaylam? L'chaya they had their own tzaynu bakar, and they had the Slav. So as they effective Yaakov Emden, and he bleibt tzarichin, he doesn't have a teretz. Bam bekasha. So Reb Chaim Volozhiner in Ruach Chaim. This is a Bavuster of Chaim Volozhiner. He says like this: Ruach Chaim, Perek Gimel, Mishnah Gimel. He says that there's Kaidem the Chet of Adam Arishan, his Michael, his food was Ruchni, and he says that that Rabbi Yishmael is saying that it's Nivla b'Masayim v'Arbaim v'Shmoinei Varim. That is a ruchniistic Michael, which means that there's only taiv in it. There's no ra, and that's why you don't have to go to the bathroom, because that's always what comes out is the ra shabai. Zok Reb Chaim Volozhiner, ve'inyan hakarban hayakach. This a carbon is the zelbezach. The eish takes away the ra, and all that's left is kulei taif. And he says, "V'chein haya haman hayerin min hashamayim kulei taif." It was kulei taif, and it wasn't nivla be'ivarim. V'chein basar hakarbon nivla kulei be'ivarim ve'enei maitzim imenu psilas. When Klal Yisrael used to eat karbanos, there was no psilas. There was nothing. Zok Reb Chaim Volozhiner, v'chein muchach mechachamenu zechreinam levracha. He says it's muchach from Chazal. Why? Because he brings our Gemara of Rabbi Yishmael, lechem shenivla be'ivarim, and he brings what the Gemara says that what did they need to go to the bathroom for? They needed dvarim shaknanim hayamaychim lam. Says frek there, l'chayra nehi, the name of this vilayatan basar taiva nesa b'midbar. He says, you could say this Tana, which is actually Rabbi Yishmael l'shitase, that Rabbi Yishmael holds that basar taiva was aser. It's the same Rabbi Yishmael. There's only one Rabbi Yishmael, one Tana Rabbi Yishmael. So this Rabbi Yishmael holds basar taiva is aser. So really Rabbi Yaakov Emden's kasha from the Tzaynu Bakar is a pella. What do you mean Tzaynu Bakar? They weren't allowed to eat Tzaynu Bakar. They weren't allowed to eat their Tzaynu Bakar that they had. They had to bring it as a carbon. Zok Reb Chaim Volozhiner, they had to bring it as a carbon. If they had to bring it as a carbon, that also was nivla be'ivarim. So you can't ask from the Tzaynu Bakar, because the Tzaynu Bakar was nivla be'ivarim. The only way they were allowed to eat Tzaynu Bakar, because it's Rabbi Yishmael l'shitase. It's not mamish mediyik in the Lashon Chaim Volozhiner that he's saying it's Rabbi Yishmael l'shitase, but l'chayra he's saying, but it is Rabbi Yishmael l'shitase, and Rabbi Yishmael l'shitase holds basar taiva as aser. So the only way you could bring it was if you brought a carbon, and since a carbon is nivla be'ivarim, So that wouldn't be an answer. That wouldn't be a way why Klal Yisrael needs to go to the bathroom. So but he doesn't handle Slav. But I think with what we're saying is very geschmack, because we're saying that the Slav was also a b'derech nes. It came b'derech nes, and if it became b'derech nes, then it didn't have a din of basar, and memela. That's all the rayas we're bringing. Now we're selling it back to Slav. We're saying this Slav was basar hayarid min hashamayim, and like Adam Arishan was allowed to eat it because it wasn't basar, and like the Reb Chanina Baishia didn't create it erev Yom Tov because it wasn't basar. So Slav was also just like the man, and that's what that would answer Yaakov Emden's kasha, his other kasha from Slav. Why didn't the Slav make them go to the bathroom? Because it was b'derech nes. So lefizeh, you could say the pshat in the Gemara in Chulin. We asked, what the Gemara in Chulin? The Gemara in Chulin asked, Rabbi Samar Garbus had a bamba kasha. What was the Gemara's havamina? That according to Rabbi Yishmael, basa taiva was aser. All basa was aser, even a chaya. What about Slav? And we ask Gufa, why didn't the Gemara ask on Rabbi Yishmael from Slav? The teretz is because this whole Slav was b'derech nes. It was b'derech nes. It came b'derech nes. Memela wasn't basar. So when basar taiva was aser, according to Rabbi Yishmael, Slav was never aser because it came b'derech nes. That was the uftu of the Slav. That's why Kadosh Baruch Hu gave them Slav. It came b'derech nes. Becomes the derech nes, so memela they didn't have to. It wasn't aser. Basar taiva was not aser. So there's one kasha. There's one klar kasha that you could ask on this. That the Gemara, that same Gemara in Yuma Ayin Hema Beis says that brings a drasha shatayach tana mishmei de Yeshua ben Karcha al tikri shatayach elo shachut melamed. Sheyorad lahem liyisrael imaman davar sheton shchita. Came down to Klal Yisrael with the man, the Slav, that needs shchita. So it sounds like beferish that the Slav needs shchita. If it needs shchita, l'chayra it's not derech nes. This derech nes l'chayra doesn't need shchita. And v'haraya, if we're saying it's derech nes, it shouldn't need shchita, is because the Shalah actually says by Yosef and the Shvatim, he says that the machlekes, if they were eating Eiver min achai, so some shitas say it was a ben pekua, so it didn't need shchita, and just Yosef didn't chap that. The Shalah says it was an animal that was created with the Sefer Yetzirah. So if it was an animal that was created with the Sefer Yetzirah, so it doesn't need shchita. So l'chayr, this Gemara is mefurish, not like what we're saying. But Lamaisa, the Yerushalmi and Nazir says, where's the Yerushalmi and Nazir? In Perek Dalet Halacha Vav, because it was bothering me. If you hold Ein Shchita L'Aif Min HaTorah, so then this drasha Stam is not a drasha. If there's no such thing as Shchita for an Aif Min HaTorah, there's a Machlekes Tanaim. Is there shchita for an Aif Min HaTorah or not? If you hold there isn't, how do you learn what's pshat in this Gemara? So the Yerushalmi Taka says, according to that mandamar, Ein Shchita L'Aif Min HaTorah, it's asmachta ba'alma. It's not this Gemara is just an asmachta because there's really no shchita L'Aif Min HaTorah. So this drasha is not a klor zach, and Ramela, it's not so schwer to say that the Slav came down b'derech nes. And I found that both the Megadim Chadashim and the Chavatzalas Hasharon, they both bring a bunch of Mekayris that the Slav came b'derech nes. There's a Malbim in Tehillim, there's a Merkavas HaMishnah, and there's also a Sifsei Kayin, who is a Talmud of the Ari, that says that the Slav came b'derech nes. So Ken Zayin, Ken Zagen das. Aber once again, if you come back to the Ramban always talks about everything, and the Ramban says, Beferish not like this. The Ramban says that he doesn't like the way how the Tana Reb Shimon learns the Machlekes HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Moshe. And he doesn't like the way how Rabbi Yehuda Nasi learns the Machlekes. He likes the way how Rabbi Kiva learned the Machlekes HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Moshe. And he says, Azay Halt Unkelis, that it was just, Moshe was taka asking, right, Hatzainu Bakar Yishachet Lahem, that just could Hashem do it. And then Zakter and Ban, but it's a Pella like Reb Shimon asked Rabbi Kiva, that Moshe Rabbeinu, who's B'chol Beisi Neman, how could Moshe Rabbeinu ask such a kasha? And he says, Kulam Ro Kfar Neflois Gedolos Mizu, they saw a much bigger nisim. So Zakter and Ban and Moyedik Yisayt, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does nisim. They're either Kulei Taif Hashem Lakol Rachma Lakol Masav, but they could also be Kulei Ra. A nace could be Kulei Ra. This is his lashon. V'nei ein benisim rak toiva shlema berachamim or nikama b'midas hadin. There's only Kulei Toiv or Kulei Ra. So he says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe that it's going to be Ra, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, he says by the mon in the Parshas B'Shalach, it said, Hineni mamtir lachem lechem min hashamayim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, or Hineni oimed lefanecha sham al atzur b'chayev. But over here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't promise anything. So Moshe understood that it's not going to be b'derech nes. That's what Moshe understood, that it's not going to be b'derech nes. So Moshe was asking that even if you would gather all the animals from around or all the fish, that's not enough for Klal Yisrael. That's not enough. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu answered that I could do this even b'derech mikra. And Zakter Ramban v'chein haya shenasa ruach me'es Hashem. There was a regular wind. It wasn't a wind of ruach yam chazak ma'od like by Kriyas Yamsuf, or ruach kadem aza like it says by a Moifis. It was just a ruach stam. Vayaga salvim min hayam, and nothing was created. Loy shenivru ata ba'avuram, it was not created. Ve'ein ba'davar chidush mitivay shel olam. There was nothing nace about this. So the Shaklavataria was, could HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Avada Moshe knew that HaKadosh Baruch Hu could create nisim, but Moshe understood there wasn't going to be a nace here. So that's what Moshe asked. There's no nace here, so how are you going to do it? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, I could do it even b'derech nace, even not b'derech nace, b'derech teva. Zakter Ramban, and then he fears ice. V'oid shekfar haya lahem kain. V'loi chidish ata rak shiyu salvim rabim ma'id. So this is the Ramban l'shitosei, that the Ramban in Parshas B'Shalach says that he asks the kasha, what is the second kvetch for the Slav? If the Slav was still around, the first Slav was still around, well, why were they kvetching? So he says it could be that the Slav wasn't filling, it wasn't lasaiva, or he says yitachin shayi gedoleyam loikdem isai, or shayim izdamen lachasidim shebahem. Only the Hasidim got it, and everybody wanted it, because he says by the Slav in Parshas B'Shalach it doesn't say vayilketu hamarbe vehamamit that everyone got, no matter if you did a lot or you collected a lot or a little. So he says that is what the kvetch was. The Ramban learns the kvetch was that they had Slav already the whole time, but maybe only the Hasidim were getting it. So they kvetched again in our Parsha. The Ramban, it would be a little schwer why they were kvetching again now, but why now? Why all of a sudden now are they kvetching? But Zakter Ramban, that they were kvetching again, even though they had Slav the entire time, and because maybe originally only the Hasidim were getting it, and now even everybody else wanted it. But Avad Zakter Ramban, it's Mivur in the Ramban that it was all b'derech hateva, it was not b'derech nes. So it's shaloi kidvarenu. But yesh ami lusmech, what we said, that it was b'derech nes, even though the Gemara l'chayr is mavur like the Ramban, but you could be matchik the Gemara as well. The only thing I want to end off with is that this Ramban saying that the Slav continued the whole time, and how we were going the whole parsha, is really a mefurish machlekes Rashi and Tosfos in Erechin Tesvav Amud Beis. Fascinating. The Gemara in Erechin says there were two Slavs. Zok Rashi on the top of Tesvav Amud Beis, Beslav Rishon Keshehischal Aman Leired Hayaslav Yared Imay. Slav would come down with it. Sounds like that the Slav was there the entire time, they just wanted more. Zok Tosfos, the Barmaschal Avu Taiva, Rabbi Yosef Kara Pirish, Sheposak Lahem HaSlav Rishon V'Asafsef Asher Bekirba Avu Taiva. Right, that the first Slav stopped, and that's how the Cheskuni says in our parsha. So according to Tosfos and according to the Cheskuni, that the Slav completely stopped. So it makes sense that they're asking. Why are they asking now? That I don't know, according to those Rishonim. But there's a Greisa Machlekes, the Ramban, that says that the Slav continued the whole time. And that stems with what Rashi is saying. Not Mamish, because Rashi says Hisavu Taiva Yoser. It sounds like they just wanted more. And the Ramban is saying that it was the regular people that wanted Slav. But Taisus Mefurish said over there in Erich and Tezvav Beis, and the Cheskuni by us, both say that the Slav stopped, the first one stopped, and the second one is a whole new one. Shkoyach.